of any of the parties or their lawyers. Thus, if we could self-regulate ourselves, I'd appreciate that, but there should be no movement onto the floor during an argument. We now proceed to closing arguments. The House prosecutor is recognized for the purpose of making his closing argument. He has 60 minutes in which to present this portion of his argument. Please be seated.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chief Justice. President Cullerton, Leader Radonio, ladies and gentlemen of the Illinois Senate. In this trial, we have laid out a pattern of abuse of power by Governor Rod Blagojevich that culminated in his arrest on December 9th, 2008. The governor was arrested for 5 separate criminal acts, all of which demonstrate that every decision this governor made was based on one of 3 criteria: his legal situation, his personal situation, and his political situation. During this trial, we've explained all of these acts, largely through the governor's own words. But they were more than just words. They were actions. They were directives to act, and they were acknowledgments of wrongdoing. We're going to take you through each one of these acts and then demonstrate that this pattern of abuse of power spanned, in fact, throughout the governor's entire tenure in office. First, I'd like to talk about the Senate seat. The governor's own words demonstrated, time and time again, that he saw his ability to appoint a U.S. Senator as a golden goose, as a bargaining chip to be leveraged for his own personal and political well-being. 31 conversations intercepted by the federal government and related in the affidavit of Daniel Kane. 31 conversations in which the governor made it crystal clear that he was trying to trade that Senate seat for something of value to himself. How did the governor himself characterize his power to appoint a United States Senator? It's an effing valuable thing. You just don't give it away for nothing. The governor wanted to make a trade. What was he asking? Well, he started high. He wanted a cabinet-level position in the Obama administration if he appointed the person who he thought the president-elect wanted. Secretary of Health and Human Services, an ambassadorship, a lucrative job for his wife, paid corporate board positions for his wife. And why was he entitled to these things? Because the Senate seat is a valuable thing. You just don't give it away for nothing. Then his options began to dwindle. What did he later end up considering? A position with Change to Win, an organization composed of several unions that promote union interests. A 501c4 political lobbying organization that he hoped the president would help fund through his friends. And if nothing else, if none of those could work out, he talked about appointing himself. Why? Because you don't give it away for nothing. Now, the governor has been saying that this was just harmless chatter, that this was just political talk. The evidence shows that the governor repeatedly directed subordinates to act, telling people to go negotiate on his behalf. What did he say to these people when he sent them on their way? He said, you should assume everybody's listening. The whole world is listening. Don't put it in writing. I would do it in person. I wouldn't do it on the phone. Who says those words? except somebody who has something to hide, something to cover up. The governor would say that there are people out there surrounding this issue, public individuals, who are claiming that they weren't approached or they did not have inappropriate conversations. Ladies and gentlemen, as we said in our opening statement, as we've maintained throughout this case, that's not our case. We don't know what the governor's subordinates did when they were given their directives. We don't know if they tried and failed. We don't know if they didn't try at all because they had second thoughts about the legality of what they were doing. We don't know if the governor's arrest interrupted their plans. We don't know. What we do know is what the governor said, captured over and over again by the federal government, showing that he put his own interests first and foremost, directed other people to act, and knew beyond any doubt that what he was doing was wrongful. 31 different conversations when the governor thought no one was listening. 31 wrongful acts. Easily a pattern of abuse of power all by itself. Let's talk about the Tribune Company. The evidence clearly showed that the governor attempted to put a price tag on the provision of financial assistance to the Tribune Company. And what was that price tag? He wanted some editorial board members at the Chicago Tribune fired. 15 conversations with John Harris over a one-month period. 15 conversations in which the governor repeatedly directs Harris to talk to high-ranking members of the Tribune Company. 15 conversations in which the governor makes it clear the message he wants delivered. No money from the state unless those editorial board members are fired. The governor was secretly recorded directing John Harris to tell a Tribune official, everything is lined up, but before we go to the next level, we need to have a discussion about what you guys are going to do about that newspaper. Harris replies back, I won't be so direct. And the governor says, yeah, you know what you got to say. Repeatedly, the governor follows up with John Harris. Repeatedly, Harris reports back that he delivered the directive. More than once, we read the exchange between the governor and Harris. He got the message, right? Right. He got it loud and clear. And ladies and gentlemen, make no mistake, the governor knew that what he was doing was wrongful. He agreed that Harris should not be so direct. He agreed that Harris should deliver the message in person, not on the phone. When Harris described his conversations with the Tribune Company as delicate, very delicate, the governor says, I know. Don't push too hard, but you know what you got to do, right? Now, the governor will say that there are people around the Chicago Tribune, or the Tribune Company, who would say that they did not have improper conversations. We don't know who those people are or if they're telling the truth. But what we do know from intercepted wiretaps, intercepted oral communications at Friends of Blagojevich, is that the governor repeatedly directed John Harris to reach out to the Tribune, and whether it was true or not, Harris was telling him back, I've been talking to him, I've delivered the message. The governor's own words, scheming and plotting to shake down the Tribune Company. Fire your editorial board members if you want $150 million in state aid. 15 different conversations, 15 different examples of abuse. More than enough, all by itself, to constitute a pattern of abuse of power. Let's talk about some of the pay-to-play schemes that we heard about. We learned that the governor wanted to raise $2.5 million by the end of last year, by the end of 2008, before the new ethics bill went into play. That would have obviously curtailed his ability to raise money. And in his haste to raise as much money as he could before that deadline, we learned about 3 schemes where the governor made the price of an official act a coerced campaign contribution. We heard about pediatric care reimbursements. The governor had promised to release $8 million in children's pediatric care reimbursements. Yet in the same breath that he mentioned that, he talked about getting $50,000 from Hospital Executive 1. What did he say? I'm going to do $8 million for them. I want to get Hospital Executive 1 for $50. He even contemplated, when he didn't get the contribution right away, breaking his commitment, holding up the money. You recall that long exchange between Deputy Governor A and the governor, ending with the governor asking, we could pull that back if we needed to. Budgetary concerns, right? And Deputy Governor A said, right. We heard about the tollway project. We learned that the governor announced a $1.8 billion tollway project, and in the same breath, talking to subordinates, said he wanted $500,000 from a particular highway contractor. From his own mouth, the governor's own words. I could have made a larger announcement, but I wanted to see how they performed by the end of the year. If they don't perform, F them. The third pay-to-play scheme involved the horse racing impact fee bill. Ladies and gentlemen, you have on your desks a transcript from the audio tapes from the Federal Wiretaps. I'm going to ask the Secretary now to play these tapes one by one. I'd like to take you through each one and talk to you a little bit about it and break it down for you. Before we get to the first one, obviously these are chronological. The first phone call is from the tapped home phone of Rod Blagojevich. It's on November 13th, 2008 at 10:05 a.m. I'll remind you of the evidence in the record that the horse racing impact fee bill has not passed at this point. It's still being lobbied. It didn't pass until the 20th of November. If the Secretary could play the first tape, please. Have trouble? Sure.
Hey, how we doing? Good. Talked to Lon, and he says Johnny Johnson's good for it. Okay. He's going to give you, he didn't get it, but he said, I'm good for it. I'll just decide what accounts to get it out of it. And Ron's going to talk to you about some sensitivities legislatively tonight when he sees you with regard to timing of all of this. Right, but before the end of the year, though, right? Oh, yeah. So there was no waffling there. It's just we just got to figure it out, and so he'll give you the specific details. Oh, good. He's going to be there tonight, right? He's going with you. It's a basketball game? Yeah, with us. Yeah, he knew it was United Center. Wasn't sure what the venue was, but good. Okay, but clearly before the end of the year, right? Yeah. He's down there right now with him lobbying on a bill. He was with him last night. And he's still down there. Yeah, they're pushing a bill. So that's probably what he wants to wait on. So whatever. I think that's probably likely. He didn't get into detail with me.
I'd like to talk to you about this transcript. First of all, on page 2 of the transcript, the second of the 2 pages, on lines 10 and 11, the governor says he's down there right now with them lobbying on a bill. He's talking about the fact that Lobbyist 1 is lobbying for the horse racing impact fee bill with John Johnston. The governor knows exactly what's going on. He knows that Lobbyist 1 is down there. He knows what they're there for. He knows what their interests are. And then on lines 14 through 16, again, the governor, they're pushing a bill. And then he says, so that's probably what he wants to wait on. That's probably what he wants to wait on. The governor is saying, John Johnston doesn't want to pay the contribution until he's sure the bill is actually going to reach the governor's desk. Could you play the second tape, please? I apologize. This second tape takes place on December 3rd, 2008 at 2:21 p.m. This is after the bill has passed. This is from the intercepted cell phone call of Lobbyist 1. It's between Lobbyist 1 and John Johnston.
Hello, John. How are you? Lon. Good. Checking in. Where? Oh, I didn't know you called. Oh, yeah. I left a message earlier today. Yeah. Where are you right now? I'm at the trash. Can I come see you? Can you come see me? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'll be there probably about 45 minutes. Okay. See you.
Now we're going to take you to the third call, which occurs at 4:11 p.m. on that same day. This is a little under 2 hours later. This is intercepted from Lobbyist 1's cellular phone. It's between the governor and Lobbyist 1.
Blagojevich?
Hey, it's Lon.
Hey, on, hold on one
Is Rod there?
Yeah, they're both here. Hold on.
Thanks. Hey, Lon. Hey. So, I'm just leaving there. And I talked to him about his commitment. He goes, I said, two separate conversations. What about your commitment? He goes, Lon, I have to leave in 2 weeks, and I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks. I know that I have to have this in your hands by the end of those 2 weeks. And I said, look, there's a concern that there's going to be some skittishness if your bill gets signed because of the timeliness of the commitment. He said, absolutely not. I mean, do you want me to put some in the next quarter? I said, no. That's not my point. My point is this is all got to be in now. He goes, I'm hopefully going to have it next week, but you have my commitment. I've always been there. I'm going to be there. And I've got to have it in the next 2 weeks because I'm going out of town. Good. And the reason it took so long is that Billy came in and started talking about George Steinbrenner, and not about the bill so much, but just about his illness and all that. And I didn't want to have that conversation in front of Billy. Yeah, I know. Good job. Hey,
Can you stop that, Scott? I'd like to take you to page 1 of that transcript that we just heard. Lines 9 and 10. This is Lobbyist 1. So I'm just leaving there, and I talked to him about the commitment. Notice there's no context there. The governor requires no explanation from Lobbyist 1 about what "there" means or who "him" is. The governor knows exactly where Lobbyist 1 is, exactly what he's doing. Lobbyist 1 talks about there's a concern there's going to be some skittishness if your bill gets signed because of the timeliness of the commitment. This is what Lobbyist 1 said he said to John Johnston. He's telling Johnston they didn't want to sign the bill. They don't want to sign the bill until the contribution is in. And the governor at line 27 responds to that by saying, good. Later in the call, at the very bottom of page 1 and spilling over to the top of page 2, Lobbyist 1 is apologizing to the governor for why his call seems late. It's later than I think it appears the governor expected it to be. He's explaining that Billy came in, presumably Billy Johnston, I don't know, and started talking about things. And as Lobbyist 1 puts it on line 4, I didn't want to have that conversation in front of Billy. Well, why not? Why didn't Lobbyist 1 want to have that conversation with John Johnston in front of somebody else? Because it was an improper conversation, that's why. I'd like to play the fourth tape now, and this is the next day, December 4th, at 9:09 a.m. It's between Lobbyist 1 and the governor. And I'm going to ask the secretary to stop it a couple times and explain some things, make some points out to you, and then when it's over, we'll play the whole thing again without me interrupting.
Hey, Ron. How are you? Good. Yeah. So one thing I was thinking about last night is that you ought to give, not today, but maybe tomorrow, just give John Johnson a call and say, call and just say hello. I'm working on the timing of this thing, but it's going to get done. Okay. It's tomorrow? It's a 2-minute conversation. Yeah, happy to do it. Call him tomorrow, right? Yeah. Okay. Oh, Johnny Johnson or should I go at the Harris call? If you want me to call him directly, I will. Whatever's the best thing. I'm just a little bit... I think it's better if you do it. Okay. It's better if you do it just from a pressure point of view. Yeah, good. I'll call him and say, yeah, we want to do an event downstate. Right. We want to do it, and we hope to do this so we can get together and start picking some dates to do it that bill signing.
Okay, let's stop there. At line 3, lobbyist 1, talking about the governor being the one to make the call to John Johnson, says it would be better if you do it from a pressure point of view. What does the governor say in response to that? He says, yeah, good. And then a few lines down, elaborating on what he will say to John Johnston. He says, we hope to do this so we can get together and start picking some dates to do a bill signing. The governor is going to make sure in his conversation with John Johnson about a political contribution that he mentions that bill.
Okay, so what are the chances, based on my conversation with you yesterday, that this gets done next week? They're good. Okay. I'm telling you, he's going to be good for it. I got his face. Okay. Good.
Okay. So lobbyist 1 asks the governor, what are the chances that this gets done next week? He's asking, can this bill get signed next week? The governor initially says, they're good. Lobbyist 1 says, okay, and then the governor says, and he trails off. You heard a pause there. Now, how does lobbyist 1 interpret that pause? He jumps in and says, I'm telling you, he's going to be good for it. I'm telling you, he's going to be good for it. I got in his face. The governor was expressing hesitation about signing the bill before he got the contribution, and lobbyist 1 was making sure the governor understood he will be getting that contribution.
And I feel like there's somebody else who's holding him back. I believe it's Chris. No. Well, what's a whole year? You know what I mean? Hey, Lon. No, I don't think he's been talking to Chris.
Now, before we play that again, I want to make one more point. At the bottom of page 2, the line 28, the governor says, what took, a whole year for this contribution? This is not a man who is willingly paying a contribution. This is a man who is being pressured to pay a contribution.
Hey, Ron. How are you? Good. Yeah. So one thing I was thinking about last night is that you ought to give, not today, but maybe tomorrow, just give John Johnson a call and say, call and just say hello. I'm working on the timing of this thing, but it's going to get done. Okay. It's tomorrow? It's a 2-minute conversation. Yeah, happy to do it. Call him tomorrow, right? Yeah. Okay.
call Johnny Johnson or should I call have Harris call him? I mean, you want me to call him directly? I will. Whatever's the best thing. I'm just a little bit...
I think it's better if you do it.
Okay.
It's better if you do it just from a pressure point of view.
Yeah, good. I'll call him and say, yeah, we want to do an event downstate. We want to do it, and we hope to do this so we can get together and start picking some dates to do a set bill sign. Right?
Okay, so what are the chances, based on my conversation with you yesterday, that this gets done next week?
They're good.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm telling you, he's going to be good for it. I got his face.
okay. So, and I feel like there's somebody else who's holding him back. We all believe it's Chris.
No.
Well, what's a whole year? You know what I mean? Hey, Lon.
No, I don't think he's been talking to Chris.
Okay.
Thank you. So far, we have been talking about the information derived from the federal government's intercepts at the governor's home phone and at Friends of Blagojevich. We have from this information 60 conversations on court-authorized intercepted communications, each one sworn to in this room by Special Agent Daniel Kane, paragraph by paragraph, swearing that everything in that paragraph is true, swearing that the quotes were accurately written in, swearing that the voice identification of the governor was positive. 60 conversations, all in which the governor places his own interests first, all of which he directs other people to set plots in motion to use his official powers to personally gain. 60 examples of abuse of power. Is that not a pattern of abuse of power right there? We then heard other pay-to-play schemes earlier in the governor's administration, some of which came to light several years later. We heard about Aliata. Aliata admitted in federal court, under oath, that he bought his position at IFA for two $25,000 campaign contributions. And by the way, he was named executive director of a very important new agency, an agency created to consolidate the bonding authority in this state. But who did he report to? Who did Aliata report to? Did he report to the governor? No. Did he report to the budget office? No. Did he report to anyone employed by state government? No. Aliata reported on a weekly basis to Tony Rezko. Let's talk about the Health Facilities Planning Board. The evidence was clear that the governor directed votes on hospital permits. You got your permit approved if you made a political contribution. We heard testimony regarding Mercy Hospital in Crystal Lake. A vote of no on a certificate of need permit suddenly became a vote of yes. Why? Because that hospital gave the governor a political contribution. And this was testimony corroborated by a number of independent witnesses at the Rezko trial, and later, as he began to cooperate, by Tony Rezko himself. Then we heard about Joseph Carey and his plane ride with the governor, about what the governor wanted to do, what plans he had to be governor. What did the governor tell Joseph Carey? That he wanted to balance the budget? That he wanted to improve education? No. He said he intended to use the power of his office, his power to award contracts, to get campaign contributions from those contractors. And why did Joe Carey ultimately plead guilty? Because he told a company that they had to hire a particular consultant company or they wouldn't get state work. Joe Carey admitted to telling that company in Illinois, The governor and the people around the governor pick the consultants. The governor's abuse of power extended to his disregard of the legislature. You heard testimony that the governor repeatedly directed his staff to intrude upon the legislative powers, on your powers, by ordering his agency to ignore decisions of the Joint Committee on Administrative Rules, JCAR. Now, whether or not you believe that expanding family care is a good idea, and I know a lot of you do, the point is not the ends, but the means. As the Auditor General said yesterday, we are a state and country of laws, and everyone, the governor included, must obey them. And yet he directed the department by rule to raise the eligibility level for family care, despite the fact that JCAR rejected that rule, not once, not twice, but 4 separate times. He directed the agency to follow not the law on the books, but the law that the governor wanted. But the governor cannot make law. Only you here in the legislature can do that. And if we allow this to happen just because this particular program is a well-intentioned one, then how do we stop a governor when he implements one for an ill-intentioned purpose? We have the Executive Inspector General report. We didn't have a live witness for that. We didn't need a live witness for that. That report couldn't have been clearer. The Governor's Office of Intergovernmental Affairs, GOIA, directed the Illinois Department of Employment Security to manipulate job descriptions to avoid veterans' hiring preferences, told employees to falsify their employment applications. The Executive Inspector General found that the Governor's office was behind all of these illegal actions and showed, quote, a complete and utter contempt for the law. We heard from the Auditor General, who talked about many things. First, the efficiency initiative. Now, this was something that started out in the General Assembly. It was designed to reduce costs, to streamline governmental services. But when the governor and his staff got a hold of it, it became a tool to subvert the appropriations process and to direct millions of dollars to favored consultants. The largest of which, a $25 million contract, went to a company that didn't even exist at the time. 2 senators, during questioning, described this as a money laundering scheme. The flu vaccine procurement. The governor knew that the procurement of vaccine was illegal under federal and state law, but he proceeded anyways. And worse yet, he not only violated federal and state law, but he entered into a contract for $2.6 million in vaccine, knowing that not only that it couldn't be delivered, but that we didn't need it. We already had the vaccine, but he had started down the road and he wasn't going to turn back. The state is still on the hook for that $2.6 million, and based on the other vaccine the Illinois talked about buying for other states, we're lucky that number is not $8.2 million. Then we get to the iSaveRx program. More of the same. Again, the FDA told the governor not once, but twice, that importing drugs from foreign countries was illegal under both federal and state law. Not because it was a bad idea per se, not because affordable drugs are a bad thing, far from it, but because drugs from foreign countries cannot be determined to be safe, not by the federal government at least. But the governor was undeterred. He implemented the program anyways. The result? No monitoring, no testing of the drugs, no supervision of the foreign pharmacies whatsoever. Exactly the reasons why it's illegal in the first place under federal law, because it's unsafe. But for the governor, splashy press releases were far too valuable to let little details like safety and soundness get in the way. It cannot go unmentioned here as we talk about whether the governor is fit to serve. It cannot go unmentioned. Other things that we heard on the intercepted federal wiretaps, in which the governor indicated that he no longer wishes to serve. He indicated that several times in several ways. He was quoted on November 10th. He does not want to be governor for the next 2 years. He referred to remaining in office as governor as having to suck it up for 2 years. He expressed frustration at being stuck as governor. When he was talking to the Chicago Cubs about the IFA financing, he told them they better get that project done by the January meeting of the IFA because, quote, I'm sorry, not quote yet, the governor was, quote, contemplating leaving office in early January 2009. And we know he was contemplating leaving office. Look at the jobs he was trying to get. Secretary of Health and Human Services, ambassador, a job at Change to Win, anything but the office of governor. I'd like to say just a couple of words about the rules of this proceeding because we've heard so much about it outside this chamber this week. I have said before, and I will say again, that these rules are even-handed and fair. They apply equally to both sides. The governor has spent a lot of time outside this state mischaracterizing these rules. He says that evidence from the House impeachment record cannot be questioned. That is absolutely not true. The governor questioned the evidence in the House, and he can do so here. You members have been questioning and challenging the evidence for the last 3 days. If the governor had watched, he would know that. The prohibition from the United States Attorney's Office. Well, listen, that hampered us as well. Don't you think we would have loved to be able to call the victims of these shakedowns, the hospital executive at Children's Memorial, John Johnston? We were just as hampered as he was. But we told you all along, our case was really not about those subsidiary people. It was about the governor's own words. And in that regard, we called Special Agent Dan Kane, who told you he listened to all those tapes and verified it was the governor's voice and verified that the quotes were accurately transmitted to the affidavit, paragraph by painstaking paragraph. The governor wasn't here to cross-examine him. The governor wasn't here to testify in his own defense, because who has better knowledge about what the governor said than the governor? The governor has called this tribunal a kangaroo court. He's called it a sham. He's claimed the fix is in. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you that is not the body that I've been working in front of this week. That's not what I've seen. I have seen a body that has deliberated at length. I have seen a body that has repeatedly challenged us, as you should, on every point. A body that has asked insightful and deliberative questions. I have seen a body that has done honor to this process and honor to the Constitution, and I am proud to have had the opportunity to present in front of you this week. Ladies and gentlemen, we believe that we have more than adequately demonstrated a pattern of abuse of power. We're asking you to judge this governor based on the totality of his actions. Now, I want to be clear. The article of impeachment refers to some or all of the acts. We have 13 paragraphs. It is not our responsibility, our burden, it is not necessary that you be satisfied that all 13 paragraphs have been established. All that you need to be satisfied with individually is that you have found a pattern of abuse. No matter how many different paragraphs that takes, or as we have suggested in some of these, like the Senate seat, I would argue that's a pattern all by itself with 31 separate acts. From the intercepted conversations, oral and wire communications alone, we have 60 conversations, all related to plots by the governor to use his official acts to further his own personal gain. That, I would suggest, easily shows a pattern of abuse of power all by itself. That's not counting the corruption at the Health Facilities Planning Board. That's not talking about Aliata's purchase of his position. That's not talking about Joseph Carey and the things that the governor said to Joseph Carey. Combined with that, the governor's clear disregard of the law and legal procedures with regard to JCAR, the Executive Inspector General's report, scathing report on hiring at the Department of Employment Security, and the Holland audits, the pattern of abuse of power is unmistakable. The evidence showed that throughout his tenure as governor, the governor has abused the power of his office and put his own interests above the people's. Which interests? Legal, personal, political. The people of this state deserve so much better.